Today we're doing Saxon math. This is lesson 13, problems about comparing and elapsed time problems. So when you're comparing stories, they may have a subtraction pattern. Like if you have something that was greater and you subtract a lesser amount, you end up with a difference. Sometimes there's elapsed time problems. They'll have a subtraction pattern as well. Like the later date subtract the earlier date equals the difference. Remember the four-step process. Number one, read the problem and identify its pattern. Number two, write an equation for the given information. Number three, find the number that solves the equation and check the answer. And your fourth step, review the question and write the end answer. Problems about comparing in a subtraction pattern usually have a larger minus a smaller value equaling a difference, like this example. There are 195 students in Bob Kali's elementary school, and there are 162 students in Garrison High School. How many fewer students attend the high school? So if you were to break this down, you could say 195 is the larger amount, minus the 162 is the lesser amount or the smaller amount, and it will equal the difference. The best way to write these obviously would be vertical instead of horizontal. Then you can just work it out and borrow whenever you need it. So if we had these values, this would be 3, this would be 3, this would be nothing. So the difference is 33 students would be the difference. In example 1, there are 324 girls and 289 boys in the school. How many fewer boys than girls were there in the school? So identifying the pattern, I see it's going to be a subtraction pattern. It says fewer boys. So my equation is going to be 324 girls minus the 289 boys. And I'll find the equation will be this. When I change this to 14, that'll go in there 5 times. I've got to borrow here. That turns out to 11. 11 minus 8 is 3. So the label, it says how many fewer boys than girls. So it should be 35 boys. And actually be more specifically fewer boys. That's the question it's asking right here. How many fewer boys than girls? So 35 fewer boys. In this example, we have an elapsed time problem. In 1776, our country declared its independence from Great Britain. How long has the United States been united? So the earlier date minus the later date, you've got an earlier date, which is 1776. So if you're looking at a timeline, you've got 1776 happens before our latest date, which is 2020 now, and then you've got the elapsed time. So over here would be 0 somewhere, and then as you move along, you can see the earlier date happens before the later date. The later date occurs on a timeline like that. So we take our later date minus our earlier date to find the difference. So we just have to take 2020 minus 1776, and you end up with 10 here. This would be 1. This would end up being 4. We'd have to borrow here from that one. We'd end up with 11 minus that would end up being 4, and then we'd have 2. So we have 244 years as how long the United States has been united and independent. How many years were there from 1492 to 1620? So again, the later date minus the earlier date. So in this case, the later date is the 1620. And we're going to subtract the earlier date, the 1492, from it. And we borrow here. This would be 1. This would be 10. We'd end up with 8. We'd borrow here. This would be 5. This would be 11. That'd be 2. 128 years would be the label. And write and label the answer. And we did that, step 4. Example 3, Abraham Lincoln was born in 1809 and died in 1865. For how many years did he live? So the later minus the earlier again is the pattern here. It's a subtraction pattern. We have he died in 1865. That would have been the later date. And the earlier date was 1809. So if we subtract those, we have to borrow this one. This would be 5. This would turn into 15. This would be 6 away from 15. That would be 5. That'd be 0. So he was 56 years old. That's how old Abraham Lincoln was. All right, moving on. All right, let's try this. Practice set. So follow the 4-step method and solve each of these problems. So as you do this, along with each answer, include the equation you use to solve the problem. So letter A, go ahead and do that. The population of Castor is 26,290. The population of Weston is 18,962. How many more people live in Castor than live in Weston? So I have, if I look at this, I'm going to take the 26,290 value, which is the greater value, and I'm going to subtract the lesser amount from it. And I just need to write it vertically. This would turn into 8. This would be 10. So this would be 8. This would be 2. I have to borrow here. This would turn into a 5. This would turn into a 12. That'd be 3. I need my comma. 5 minus 8 doesn't work, so I'm going to change it to 15 by borrowing 10 from here. And then end up with 7,328. And then I'd say people is the label for that one. 7,328 people. And letter B. 2 important dates in British history are the Norman Conquest in 1066 and the signing of the Magna Carta in 1215, which limited the power of the king. How many years were there from 1066 to 1215? So this is an elapsed time problem. Go ahead and do that. So I'd start with 1215, which is the later date, subtract the earlier date, the 1066, and I see I've got to borrow right away. This would turn into 0. This would be 15. 15 minus 6 would make 9. This would I'd have to borrow from this one, so that becomes 1. This is 4, and that's 1, and then those would be 0. So this would be the answer label. It says how many years, so it'd be 149 years. Excellent. All right, we are done. Make sure you do written practice 13. Tomorrow you guys can get a good start on it if you'd like, and then put your answers into the Go Formative to check them. All right, have a great evening, and we'll see you guys tomorrow.